Exposed. Heartwarming mother's 30-day journey to discover her betrayed puppy's amazing fate. Sarah's heart raced as she scanned the park. Her beloved puppy Max was nowhere to be found. The air was thick with the sounds of children laughing and dogs barking. Yet all she felt was the cold grip of panic. Just hours ago, they were playing fetch in the sun, Lily's radiant laughter echoing in her ears. But now? Now a gnawing fear clawed at her soul. Max was missing, and with him a part of their little family felt lost. This wasn't just a dog. Max was the heartbeat of their home. He had licked away Lily's tears on tough days and celebrated their simple triumphs with playful bounces. Each bark and wag expressed the love Sarah fought to build as a single mother, juggling her job at the diner and the spirited energy of her 8-year-old daughter. The thought of her daughter crying shattered Sarah's heart even more. Days turned into a blur of frantic searches and sleepless nights. While Sarah continued to work, the diner felt different. Kind faces became blurred, and she could hardly focus on orders when the image of Max's bright eyes haunted her. Assuring Lily that they would find him felt like a fragile promise slipping from her grasp. Each failed search launched another wave of doubt. Where could he be? Was he scared? Hungry? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Then a breakthrough. A neighbor called. Sarah, I've seen a puppy that looks like yours. Hope ignited. Could this be it? But as she raced down the street, her heart pounded heavily in her chest. The realization that this tight-knit community might harbor secrets dulled her excitement. Whispers floated in the air. Could someone know more about Max than they let on? As she dug deeper, she caught wind of something chilling. Tales of an underground pet trade tangled amongst neighbors' hushed conversations. Each mention sent a shiver down her spine. If they had taken Max, it wasn't just a dog, it was a betrayal. How could those who feigned friendship turn out to be part of something so dark? Can she trust anyone? Her mind swirled with questions. The pressure of finding Max transformed into a desperate fight against a hidden enemy. As Sarah uncovered layer after layer of deceit, the trust she once cherished among her neighbors transformed into uncertainty. With Lily's innocent joy at stake, Sarah stood on a precipice. Could seeking justice for Max cost her something even more precious? The air felt thick, tension crackling like static. The closer she came to uncovering the truth, the darker the shadows loomed. As she faced the first real betrayal in her life, one question echoed in her heart. Who could she really trust? Leaving readers hanging, the chapter breaks suddenly at this cliff of uncertainty, igniting their desire to know what fate awaits them in the next turn of the story. The sun sank low in the sky, casting long shadows across the pavement as Sarah made her way back home. The promise of something hopeful had flickered like a candle in her heart, only to be extinguished by the weight of betrayal yawning wide around her. The call from her neighbor hadn't led to Max. In fact, Sarah found only a small dog barking frantically at her. It was as if the universe mocked her. Each step felt heavier than the last. The neighborhood that once felt warm and familiar now seemed cloaked in suspicion. She could almost hear the murmurs of people behind closed doors, speculating, laughing perhaps, at her desperate fight. When she finally reached her front door, the reality of her home struck her. It was a place that had once been filled with laughter and playful barks. Now it resonated with an embarrassing silence. She slipped inside, finding Lily bent over her homework, pencil racing across the page, unaware of the storm swirling around them. "Hey, sweetie," Sarah said, forcing a smile. She couldn't let Lily see the cracks in her resolve. It was what a mother did, right? Mask fears with love? Did you find Max? Lily's voice was bright, yet tinged with expectation that felt like a weight cracking her smile. Sarah knelt beside her, taking a deep breath. "Not yet, baby. But we're going to keep looking. We just have to be patient." "Okay." Lily shrugged, visibly trying to mask her disappointment. "Can I draw him a picture? He'll like that." "Absolutely," Sarah said, touched by her daughter's innocent hope. Watching her pick up crayons brought a flicker of joy that reminded her why she had to keep fighting. She busied herself with making dinner, the chopping of vegetables slicing through the heavy atmosphere. But even as she worked, Sarah's mind whirled. She had to take action. If there were whispers of an underground pet trade, she needed to learn more. She couldn't let this settle upon her family. She would not allow Max to become just another lost story. That night, sleep eluded her as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. A battery of thoughts played in her head, each one escalating against the other. Every unanswered question dug at her heart. Determined, she resolved to confront these shadows and step out of her comfort zone. Morning brought a heavy fog and a determination that filled her chest. She grabbed her phone and perused social media groups dedicated to lost and found pets. A surge of adrenaline rushed through her as she found a post revealing photos of pets recently taken in their neighborhood, a few resembling Max, their expressions familiar yet wrong. Someone must know something, she muttered under her breath, feeling the embers of rage ignite within her. Armed with that information, she had a plan. Maybe it was dangerous, maybe it was reckless, but she couldn't just sit idle anymore. As she strapped on her shoes, ready to venture into the depths of deception, Sarah glanced at Lily, who was busy creating a makeshift missing Max poster. Her daughter's hope fueled the fire in Sarah's soul. But deep down, a question lingered. Was she prepared to face the truth? What if the secret she uncovered led her to something darker than she imagined? With a determined heart and an undeniable weight on her shoulders, she opened the door and stepped into the uncertain world outside. What awaited her could change everything. The streets outside felt different in the morning mist, cloaked in a veil of uncertainty. Sarah took a deep breath. Each inhalation filled her lungs with the cool air she had once loved. Now it felt stale, as if it were the last remnants of a happy world slowly drifting away from her grasp. She started walking, aimlessly at first, letting the layers of anxiety chip away with every step. With her phone gripped tightly in one hand, she scrolled through the social media group filled with other desperate pet owners. Their stories echoed her own heartbreak. Each photo of a lost animal tugged at her heartstrings, a painful reminder of Max's absence. She needed answers, and it was clear the community may hold the keys. She walked further into the neighborhood. She came across the park where Max used to romp freely. Memories flooded back. The way he would chase squirrels, his goofy jumps when he spotted a friend. The thought twisted her stomach, reminding her of what she lost. There was no turning back. She had to press on. Scanning the park, she noticed a cluster of dog owners chatting animatedly at the dog run. They appeared friendly enough, their dogs bounding joyfully, oblivious to the turmoil around them. "Excuse me," she approached them. "I'm looking for my dog Max. Have any of you seen him?" A woman with a golden retriever turned, her eyes warm but cautious. "What does he look like?" Sarah described him in detail, her voice trembling slightly. "He's a medium-size, brown and white mix with the sweetest face. He's got a tiny patch of white on his nose." The group listened, some heads nodding with familiarity, but there was no recognition in their eyes. Just as she was ready to lose hope, a younger man spoke up. "I saw a dog like that a couple of days ago, near the corner of Maple and Elm. But he didn't look lost, more like he was waiting for someone." Her heart raced. "What do you mean by waiting?" "I don't know. Just it didn't seem right. I felt like I saw him with someone who looked suspicious. Do you think it's possible they took him?" The words felt like ice in her mouth. The thought of someone being capable of that felt surreal and terrifying. "Someone took my dog once," the woman with the golden retriever chimed in. "If you're worried, I can help you. We can rally people in the neighborhood to keep an eye out." Sarah nodded, gratitude flooding her chest. Perhaps she wouldn't have to navigate this alone after all. They exchanged numbers, and Sarah felt a sliver of hope return as she walked home. A plan began to form in her mind. She needed to gather more information, and quickly. If someone had seen Max, maybe they could lead her to where he was now. But with each thought, the gravity of her mission pressed heavier on her. That evening, with her heart pounding in sync with her resolve, she sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by crayon drawings of Max and flashcards of his favorite tricks. She pored over ideas for a flyer, her mind racing with details. As she focused on the poster she was creating, an unexpected thought struck her. What if she had to confront those who might have Max? If it led her to a shady deal or a hidden network? Could she handle the truth if it was worse than imagined? Taking a deep breath, she tore the paper into pieces, crumpling it in frustration. Her resolve didn't waver. It only grew. She made a vow not just to herself but to Lily, to Max. Somewhere in this tangled web of deceit and fear, she would find the answers. And then the phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen. With her heart racing once more, she answered, unsure if this call would be a turning point or a harbinger of more pain. Who was it on the other end? Could it be someone finally leading her closer to Max? Hello? Sarah's voice came out, a shaky whisper, filled with a mix of hope and dread. Is this Sarah? The voice on the other line was deep and calm, but there was an edge of something, a roughness that made her stomach twist. Yes, this is she. Who is this? Do you know anything about my dog, Max? Listen, I don't have much time, the voice said abruptly. I saw a dog that looks like him. He was near Maple and Elm like the other guy said. But I'm worried that if you go looking for him, you might get hurt. There is something going on. Her pulse quickened. What do you mean? Please, you have to tell me more. The caller hesitated, the line crackling with tension. I can't explain everything over the phone. Meet me at the diner on Pine Street in an hour. Come alone. Before Sarah could respond, the line went dead. The weight of the conversation sank in. Anxiety surged through her veins. It was all she could do to suppress her instinctual fear. But Max was out there. What if this stranger held the key to bringing him back? With her heart thundering in her chest, she set aside everything and prepared herself. She needed to look presentable, even if the situation felt absurd. She splashed some water on her face and tried to calm her racing thoughts. With each step toward the diner, her mind danced with possibilities. What if this was a trap? What if it was someone trying to exploit her desperation? But there was also a flicker of hope she just might get the answer she so desperately sought. The diner was a snug little building, bathed in warm light that spilled onto the sidewalk. Sarah pushed open the door and was immediately greeted by the comforting scent of fried food and fresh coffee. But any feeling of warmth evaporated as she scanned the room. She spotted a man sitting in the corner, nervous eyes darting around the space. He looked like he had just rolled out of bed, with tousled hair and an old jacket, but there was a seriousness about him that churned her insides. Gathering her courage, she approached. Are you the one who called me? He nodded, glancing over his shoulder before gesturing for her to sit. Yeah, I saw your dog, but you need to listen carefully. There are some people involved. Dangerous people. Her stomach dropped. What do you mean? Where is he? Look, it's complicated. But I can show you where I last saw him. There was urgency in his voice. Just promise me you won't do anything stupid. Her mind spun. This was her chance, but she felt a wave of uncertainty crash over her. She had to trust this stranger, and yet how could she? Please, she implored. Just tell me more. He took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing. Max is in a place where they sell dogs. Bad people who take them from people like you. I can get you close, but it's risky. The last thing I want is to see you hurt. Sarah's heart raced. The world around her faded as the reality of his words sank in. Would she be brave enough to go after him? So what's the plan? Her voice was steady, though inside she felt anything but that. He leaned in closer, lowered his voice. We'll go tonight, but you might want to think about whether you're ready for what you might find. The diner's sounds faded into the background as she locked onto his gaze. She knew everything was changing in this moment. But the risk was part of it now. She would risk anything for Emma X as they finalized their plan. A single thought echoed in her mind. Was she prepared for the truth she might uncover? The weight of what lay ahead settled around them like a shadow. Would the night lead her to Max or deeper into an abyss she couldn't escape? The neon sign of the diner flickered behind her as Sarah stepped back into the cool night, her breath creating clouds in the crisp air. She felt an urgent tug at her heart, a mix of fear and relentless hope. The man had spoken quickly, each word laced with warning, and now she was left with a choice that felt heavier than the night itself. Are you ready? He asked, his face obscured by shadows. She couldn't even remember his name, but the urgency in his voice echoed in her mind. Let us do this. The determination in her voice felt foreign, but it was real. She had to find Max. They drove in his old truck, the road winding through darkness, illuminated only by the headlights cutting through the veil. Small talk was impossible. She was too wrapped up in the thought of her missing dog. The features of the landscape whizzed past her as she glanced at him. Was he really trustworthy? Just a little further, he said, steadying the truck down a narrow alleyway. It was eerily quiet. You need to stay close to me. We don't want to attract any unwanted attention. Her stomach nodded as they rolled to a stop. The air was thick with an unsettling tension. She could almost hear her heartbeat. The man stepped out first and motioned for her to follow. They crept past rusty dumpsters and flickering lights, inching closer to a dilapidated warehouse. It looked out of place, like a relic of a forgotten time, looming ominously against the night sky. Max is inside, he whispered, casting a furtive glance around. I'll distract the guys. Just keep your head down, all right? We'll get him out. What if she hesitated, hands trembling? What if we get caught? He turned to her, concern etched on his face. We won, T. Promise. Just trust me. Taking a deep breath, Sarah nodded. Trust was all she had left. They moved silently to the warehouse door. It swung open almost silently, revealing dimly lit interiors. Shadows flickered against the walls, and a low murmur of voices resonated within as they entered. Her heart raced anew. She could hear barking a chorus of desperate yelps that sent her rushing thoughts into overdrive. Max! She murmured, hoping he would hear her through the chaos. The inside was a nightmare. Rows of cages lined the walls, filled with dogs, their anxious eyes glistening in the faint light. Each one was a silent plea for help. Sarah felt a lump in her throat. How many had been taken? The sound of footsteps echoed nearby. Quick! The man pulled her deeper into the shadows. We need to find him fast. They moved swiftly, dodging the scattered scraps of crates and tools, each second filled with the impending sense of discovery. Suddenly, a loud bark echoed through the corridor. It was familiar. Max? Her heart surged. They approached a cage in the back corner. Inside, she saw a heart-shaped face staring back at her. Max, relief washed over her like a wave, mixing with fear. Oh baby, I'm here. But before she could reach for him, male voices interrupted. Hey, who's there? Her heart dropped as lights flickered on. The men who had taken Max stood at the entrance, eyes narrowing at the duo. Time to move, the man beside her said in a low voice, grabbing her wrist and pulling her along. Panic surged through her as they sprinted toward Max's cage. All she could think about was getting him out, keeping him safe. Just as she reached for the latch, desperate hands reached out to stop her. In a heartbeat, she was torn between freedom and danger. The stakes had never felt higher. As the chaos unfolded around her, would she manage to save Max? Or was she stepping into something darker than she realized? The heart-pounding moment was upon her, and she was running out of time. A scream shattered the night, high and piercing. Sarah's heart raced as she struggled against the grip of the man who had moved in to stop her. The room felt like it was closing in, suffocating her with urgency and dread. She couldn't let them take Max away again. With a surge of adrenaline, she twisted free, flinging her hand toward the latch. Max! She cried, pressing her palm against the cage, desperation flooding her voice. She looked into his wide, frightened eyes, and it fueled her resolve. Stop! One of the men growled, taking a step forward. The other man reached for a flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness and lancing directly at Sarah. Caught in the blinding light, she froze for just a moment, but that was enough. Get her! The second man barked. Panic ignited her instincts. She flung the cage open, and Max bolted into her arms, his tiny body warm and frantic against her chest. Run! The man beside her shouted, already moving back toward the shadows, motioning for her to follow. Sarah sprinted after him, Max tucked close to her heart, his soft whimpers mingling with the escalating chaos. Their footsteps echoed off the metal walls as they raced through the warehouse. This way! He yelled, prompting a sharp turn at the next corner. Sarah's breath hitched as she imagined the men behind them chasing after, furious at their intrusion. But then, a sound silenced her fears, the blaring of a horn. A car alarm? The man smiled, his face lighting up with realization. That must be Zeke. He's causing a distraction. Encouraged, they bolted toward a fire exit, the emergency sign glowing dimly through the dark. With Max still in her arms, Sarah felt a weight lift. They might make it out. The sharp metallic smell of fear and adrenaline filled her lungs as they reached the door. The sound of shouting men closed in behind them. They were getting closer. Go, 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 the man urged, shoving the fire door open just enough for them to slip outside. The cold night air hit them, electric and fresh. Sarah dashed down the concrete steps, Max trembling in her grip. The man followed closely, glancing back toward the building, urgency etched on his face. What now? She gasped, looking around wildly. In the shadows, the parking lot seemed deserted. What if they catch us? We just need to reach my truck. It's parked a little further. He motioned toward the far end of the lot. Beyond the flickering lights, she caught the faint outline of the vehicle. A beacon of hope in the darkness. Come on, baby, she whispered to Max, stroking his fur soothingly as she bolted for the truck. Behind them, shouts echoed, fueled with anger and desperation. They reached the truck, and the man yanked the door open. Get in now, he urged, his tone leaving no room for second thoughts. As Sarah jumped into the passenger seat, she held Max tighter, hardly believing they had made it this far. The man slid into the driver's side and slammed the door. But before he could start the engine, another sound pierced the night, the heavy thud of footsteps drawing near. She turned to him, eyes wide with fear. What if we can't start it? He glanced at her, determination simmering beneath the surface. We will. Trust me, Sarah, it's not over yet. With a wrenching twist of the key, the engine roared to life. The sound felt like magic in her ears, filling her with renewed hope. But as he pressed the gas, the headlights cut through the night, illuminating figures racing toward them. Would they be able to escape? Or had they only exchanged one kind of danger for another, far more terrifying? The chase was just beginning. The engine's growl vibrated in Sarah's chest as they darted out of the parking lot, the tires screeching against the pavement. The man beside her, whose name was still a mystery, focused hard on the road ahead, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, both thrilling and terrifying, a mix of fear and hope battling within her. Go faster, Sarah shouted, her voice desperate as she turned around to look through the back window. Shadows loomed behind them, figures emerging from the dark like phantoms. She squeezed Max tighter, feeling his tiny heart racing against her own. They're getting closer. I'm going as fast as I can, he grunted, glancing at her quickly before his eyes returned to the endless stretch of asphalt. We just need to get to the highway. Suddenly, a bright light flooded their rearview mirror. A car? No, it was more than that, a truck, barreling straight toward them, headlights blaring like a beacon of danger. Sarah's stomach dropped. They're right on our tails. Hold on, he barked, swerving the truck sharply to the right, tires skidding. An explosion of gravel erupted beneath them as they veered onto a dirt road, which quickly transformed their surroundings into a blur of trees and darkness. The man slammed the gas pedal, propelling them forward as branches reached out like grasping fingers. Sarah gripped the seat, feeling herself inch closer to the edge of panic. She couldn't let fear take over. Not now. What's your name? She asked, forcing herself to breathe. Jason, he replied, barely looking at her, his gaze riveted to the path ahead. And you're brave, Sarah. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you're doing great. Brave. The word reverberated in her mind, echoing against her fears. She glanced at Max, who was nuzzled against her chest, seeking comfort. We're going to be okay, aren't we? She whispered to him, her voice quivering. The sight of his little face brought a swell of fierce protection. She had to keep him safe. Just as she found a moment of clarity, a deafening crash broke through the chaos. The truck jolted violently, throwing Sarah against her door. What was that? She screamed, heart racing. We hit something, Jason shouted, hardly missing a beat. Hang on. The vehicle lurched, tires losing grip on the uneven ground. Sarah steadied herself, adrenaline surging again when she spotted figures emerging from the shadows. They were armed. The unmistakable glimmer of metal in their hands sent waves of terror crashing over her. Jason, they're here, she screamed as he steered sharply to avoid a blockade of fallen branches. His face twisted in concentration. The headlights illuminated their pursuers, a group of menacing silhouettes now converging on their position, and in an instant, everything changed. One of the men braced himself to throw something, a rock, a weapon? Time slowed as Sarah's body tensed, instinctively preparing, bracing for impact. But then Jason grabbed the wheel, making a sharp left. The projectile missed them by inches, shattering against the trunk of a tree, sending splinters flying. Jason's foot slammed down on the gas, and they shot forward again, leaving a cloud of dust behind. "What's the plan?" Sarah yelled, her voice barely containing the rising panic. "We head for the river. They won't follow us there." Jason's voice was steady, but she could sense the tension in him, the exhaustion mingling with resolve. "Do you think we're safe?" He didn't answer her, instead focusing on the road ahead. "Just trust me," he said, a hint of vulnerability breaking through as they tore deeper into the woods. With the sounds of their pursuers fading behind them, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. Something inside her clenched tight. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. "What if they find us?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Then we fight." His answer was firm and somehow comforting, though it did little to ease her dread. With every bump of the truck, fear lurked in the shadows of her mind. Had they truly escaped the grasp of danger, or had they simply traded one nightmare for another? The headlights swept across the looming trees, revealing the path ahead. In the darkness she spotted a flicker of water, shining like a promise of deliverance. But could it really lead them to safety? "Hold on, we're almost there," Jason called out, driving them toward the edge of uncertainty. Just as they approached the bank, Sarah's heart thundered. Would this really be their salvation? Or were they about to plunge into the depths of something unforgiving? The moment felt like a coin toss, heads or tails, each side carrying a weighty consequence. Nothing was ever simple. Would they find shelter in the river's embrace? Or would the current drag them back into the night from which they had fled? The roar of the river drowned out the chaos behind them as Jason skidded the truck to a stop on the muddy bank. Water glistened in the moonlight, a silver path leading into the darkness. Sarah's breath hitched as she stared out at the swirling currents. A part of her felt the pull of hope, but another part screamed that this was a bad idea. "Now what?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Get out quick," Jason urged, kicking open the door. The moment Sarah unclipped her seatbelt, she was out, cradling Max against her chest. The chill in the air bit at her skin, and she shivered, but the warmth of Max's tiny body against hers provided comfort. They sprinted away from the truck, the sound of heavy footsteps echoing behind them like the drums of doom. Jason led the way, navigating the tangled underbrush, branches snagging at their clothes as they ducked and hurried forward. "Where do we go?" Sarah pleaded, panic rising again as they splashed toward the water's edge, trying to keep quiet. "To the stones. There." Jason pointed further downstream, where a rocky outcrop jutted into the river like a refuge. Half submerged but solid, they moved quickly, scrambling over slippery rocks, the water lapping at their ankles. There stood a small cave-like space just above the waterline. It felt both safe and claustrophobic, and it was the only cover they had. Once they were tucked inside, they caught their breath, the sound of rushing water filling the silence. Jason leaned against the wall, peering toward the darkness behind them. "I don't think they'll follow us here. They're not stupid, but it's the best shot we have." "Those men," Sarah whispered, "what do they want?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, it can't be good." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, his eyes weary and haunted. "They've been looking for something or someone, maybe us." Her heart sank at his words. It was as if the darkness had taken on physical form, wrapping around them. Holding Max tightly, she tried to swallow back the lump in her throat. "I can't go back. I can't let them have him." Jason's gaze softened. "We won't let that happen. I promise, Sarah. We'll keep fighting no matter how hard it gets. You're not alone in this." Max whined softly in her arms, sensing the tension. She rubbed his fur, grounding herself in the present moment instead of the swirling fears that threatened to overtake her. In the cave, time passed strangely. They huddled together as the cold seeped in, listening for any noise outside. Every rustle made her flinch. What if the men had found another way? Jason pointed toward the river. "You think we can cross? It looks less rushed down there." "Cross?" Sarah's voice was a whisper, a mix of disbelief and hope. "You really think we'd make it? Listen." He leaned closer, resolving to look her in the eye. "We have to be brave. If we stay here, we're sitting ducks." She studied him, soaking in the determination that radiated from his presence. It felt like a lifeline. Could they really risk everything and take the plunge? Okay, Sarah replied, summoning her courage. We follow the river. There has to be a place where we can find safety. Then let us do it, Jason said, pushing himself to a stand. As they eased their way out of the cave, the night felt different. Charged with energy, with fear and the lingering scent of possibility. Together they stepped into the water, bracing against the icy grip. But just then, a shadow flickered at the edge of the trees. Get down, Jason hissed, urgency sharpening his voice. Heart racing, they ducked beneath the surface, the water cloaking them in a tepid embrace. As Sarah held her breath, dread coiled tightly in her stomach. Would their predators have found them? Max squirmed in her hold, his tiny bark muffled by the rushing water. What was lurking in the darkness? Would it reveal help or doom? Time stood still as they waited, with danger only a heartbeat away. Would they emerge into safety or sink further into the peril that awaited? The water churned around them, cold fingers wrapping tighter as they held their breath, hearts thundering like war drums in their chests. Jason's hand squeezed Sarah's shoulder, a silent promise that they were in this together. Minutes felt like hours as they floated just beneath the surface, eyes wide and scanning the trees for any sign of the men. Every splash and rustle sent Sarah's heart into a frenzy. Would they see them creeping through? Would they hear Max whimpering softly, a sound that echoed Sarah's own silent fear? Then, as if the night itself held its breath, the sounds of pursuit faded. After what felt like an eternity, Jason broke the surface, his sharp intake of air filled with desperation. He turned to Sarah, his eyes pleading. We have to keep moving. With a deep breath, Sarah nodded. She followed Jason as they pushed through the water, the current tugging at them but not stronger than their will to survive. They reached the river bank, clambering onto solid ground, their hearts racing with the thrill of evading danger at least for now. Stumbling onto the pebbly bank, Sarah wiped water from her face, taking a moment to ground herself. She looked down at Max, who had been clamped firmly in her arms, his eyes wide and trusting. You okay, buddy? She whispered, stroking his fur, feeling the warmth of his little body against her damp shirt. Max licked her face, giving her a moment of laughter that felt both silly and precious. But her smile faded as she returned to the seriousness at hand. They were still in danger, the hunt still afoot. Jason squinted into the distance, scanning for anything, a sign of life, a place to hide, anything at all. We need to get up that ridge, he pointed. There's cover and a way to see if it's safe ahead. Right. We can't stay here, Sarah agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. They both had no idea if they were even being followed anymore. But the urge to run burned hotter than ever did as they hurried up the sloping hill. Sarah's breath came in sharp gasps. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, commanding every muscle to move despite the exhaustion creeping in. The trees closed around them, turning the world into a shadowy maze. Each step felt like a step deeper into unknown territory. To the top, they paused to catch their breath, the moonlight spilling silver across the valley below. It was a moment of stillness in a storm of chaos. Look, Jason pointed toward a faint glow in the distance. Just beyond the trees, something man-made. Do you see that? Sarah squinted, her heart jumping at the sight. A cabin? Is it even safe? We won't know if we don't try, he urged, his voice steady despite the uncertainty clinging to the air. With renewed determination, they made their way toward the light. Each step felt heavy with what might lie ahead, but they pushed on, hopeful against the odds. Sarah held Max tightly, giving him a silent vow. She would protect him, but as they approached, the fading glow revealed more than they bargained for. The door stood ajar, swaying gently as if inviting them in or warning them away. What now? Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. We need to see if someone's home, Jason murmured, his eyes darting around as he crept closer. But nothing prepared them for what they discovered inside, a sight so unexpected it would change everything, for better or worse. Would they find a helping hand? Or was this the trap they feared most? Inside the cabin, the air hung heavy with anticipation. The flickering light from a single lamp illuminated a space filled with mismatched furniture, layers of dust hinting at long-forgotten memories. Sarah's heart raced as Jason stepped cautiously over the threshold. It wasn't just the cabin's eerie ambience that made her shudder. It was the uncertainty. What would they find here? Would they stumble upon someone friendly? Or would this be a den of danger that swallowed them whole? Holding Max close, She knew she had to face whatever awaited inside. "Hello?" Jason called, his voice echoing off the wooden walls. Silence enveloped them, amplifying the tension that coiled in her stomach like a spring. They crept further inside, the old floor creaking beneath them. And then they spotted a poster hanging loosely on the wall, faded like the hopes of the lost animals depicted on it. "Help wanted. Foster homes needed for rescued pets." Beneath the cheerful illustrations of dogs and cats was a number to call. Sarah stepped closer, reading the last line. "Together we can change lives." A rush of conflicting emotions swept through her. This was a rescue operation, not the prison she feared. Was it possible that the horrors of her recent journey were close to ending? Before she could voice her thoughts, a door creaked open in the corner, and a woman emerged. Her denim jacket was splattered with paint, and her curly hair was pulled into a messy bun. The kindness in her eyes was matched only by the fierce determination that radiated from her. "You must be the ones looking for Max," she said, her voice calm and warm, breaking the silent tension. Sarah's breath caught. How did she know? "Why, you know about him?" Sarah stammered, hope and relief flooding her heart. "Of course. He is safe." The woman smiled, stepping closer. "My name is Clara. I've been taking care of him for a few days now. He was brought here after escaping that horrid place." Max squirmed in Sarah's arms, barking excitedly at the sound of the familiar name. In that moment Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. It wasn't he a nightmare. They had found him. "Can I see him?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "Absolutely," Clara replied with a nod. She led them to a small room adjacent to the main area. Sarah's heart raced as they stepped inside. And there he was. Max bounded toward her, his tail a whirlwind of joy, his once fearful eyes bright with recognition. Her heart swelled as he leapt into her arms, licking away her tears. "I thought I lost you forever," she exclaimed, holding him tightly, overwhelmed with love. "Can I keep him here?" Lily's voice echoed in Sarah's mind, a reminder of the glue that held their little family together. Clara smiled, the warmth radiating from her. "Yes, he will stay with us until you and your daughter are ready to take him home. He is safe here, I promise." Relief washed over her in waves. For the first time in days she felt a weight lift. As they stood there, surrounded by compassion and care, Sarah realized this world was still full of goodness, even amidst the shadows. "Thank you," Sarah breathed, her heart full. "Just doing what I can," Clara replied gently. And as Jason spoke to Clara about the tragic events they had escaped, Sarah sat down with Max, hugging him close. In that moment she made a silent vow to herself and to little Lily. They would turn the page. They would fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves and help others like Max. Days turned into weeks. And with Clara's help, Sarah gained the courage to bring the community together. They started a neighborhood rescue organization, focusing on awareness and ensuring that no one else would have to fear losing a beloved pet again. Her heart full, Sarah realized that even in the darkest times, there would always be light. Together they would weave a new story, one of hope, love and determination. As she looked down at Max, his eyes gleaming with delight as if he knew their journey was only beginning, Sarah felt beyond grateful. Each day would be a testament to their bond, their family stronger than ever because of the love they fought for. The road ahead was still unknown, but it was a path they would traverse together, united in heart and soul. And as Sarah stepped forward into their new life, she knew one thing for sure. Sometimes the greatest battles lead to the greatest transformations. Don't wait. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and feelings about this uplifting ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to show your support for the channel.